I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC Vegas 108, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event. And this week, the thumbnail does not give it away. I went with someone a bit different here, and my biggest stock riser on this card is Chris Duncan. Now, part of the reason, aside from the fact that this fight was awesome, was that Chris Duncan was a plus 195 underdog going into this fight. Rebecca, a lot of hype, a lot of momentum. Obviously, a couple fights removed from that Diego Ferreira fight, but still, Duncan going out there and putting on a great performance. And I think at 32 years old, he's in the prime of his career. He looked great in this one. Really exciting fight. This got performance of the night, as you can see there, or fight of the night, I should say, not performance of the night. And Chris Duncan, I thought, put on a really good matchup here. This is a fight that could have been stopped. He really laid it on Rebecca in this fight. A lot of good shots, a lot of good damage in this one. Chris Duncan, I think, will be ranked after this. Very excited to see what he's able to do in terms of his rise in the lightweight division. But to me, Chris Duncan was the biggest stock riser on this card because, again, if he lost, that would be a big setback. He had a nice win streak sort of coming into this one. Could he keep that up against some better opposition? Because let's be honest, last two opponents, not on Rebecca's level, in my opinion. So Chris Duncan, biggest stock riser on this card for me at UFC Vegas 108. Okay, second biggest stock riser is the one that is on the thumbnail, and that is Tatsuro Taira. Now, look, he was favored, and I don't think I saw many people picking Park. He was a minus 330 favorite, but this was just domination from bell to bell. And you got to remember, too, he's coming off a loss, right? So he fought Brandon Royval in his last fight, very close fight, ended up losing, I believe, a split in that one, if I'm not mistaken. But this was just exactly what you need to do. And I think it's a good look for him with the UFC as well, because he did take an opponent switch up at the last minute, went in there and dominated anyways, looked great. Nothing against Park. I thought he put up a decent fight, but Taira really, took advantage here. And again, Park was the one who had everything to gain here, undefeated. Really wasn't supposed to fight someone of Taira's caliber, and he goes out there and gets dominated by Taira in this fight. Flyweight's wide open right now. We just have Joshua Van fighting for the title. Perhaps we're seeing a changing of the guard in terms of some of the contenders. Taira's right back in the driver's seat with his victory. When you're looking back on this card, you will remember Tatsuro Taira's performance in this fight. Very dominant, very good. And honestly, I would understand the argument if you wanted to put Taira as your biggest stock riser. But to me, Chris Duncan being an underdog and fighting a better opponent, I think that put him in the number one spot. Okay, number three stock riser on this card. Again, a guy that was favored to win, but I thought he put on a great performance and is always exciting. That's Esteban Robivics taking out Elves Brenner in this one. Now, again, I mentioned it there, minus 250 favorite, but this guy's got to quit being in the apex. We need a crowd for Esteban Robivics, just pure violence, 14-2 now, 29 years old. I would argue not even in the prime of his career right now, and just put on a great performance here. And you look at the win streak he's been on with the last couple fights, especially the Hack Prass fight. I did feel like he won that fight, so realistically, we could be looking about a guy on a 5-fight win streak. Even if you thought he lost, it was still very close. And then McKinney, Zellhuber, he's looking good. This is another guy. I do wonder if maybe they do a Robivics and Chris Duncan fight next or something big in the division to sort of move these guys up. But really like the performance here from Robivics. I think his stock went up. Just again, when you put on an exciting fight, when you have a memorable performance, that's the type of thing that will raise your stock with the fans and with the promotion. Robivics gets the third biggest stock rise. Now, there's a couple honorable mentions on here, and went a couple different ways with these. I cannot ignore what Neil Magny did to Zaleski. If you watch my preview show this week, I did pick Neil Magny in this fight. I didn't really understand why people were picking Zaleski, as Zaleski was older, and Zaleski's, not much of a submission guy. That's typically where Magny falls short, is getting submitted in his fights. I know he had been knocked out by Michael Morales, but either way, I felt like Magny was fighting far better opposition. He looked good here. Nice to see Magny get a finish. I don't think he's had a finish, I think, since Daniel Rodriguez, if I'm not mistaken. No, Mike Malott, obviously. How could I forget? Mike Malott, the fight where he was losing, and Neil Magny, what that was, and then ended up finishing him in the third round. So good to see Magny in the win column here. If he would have lost here, who knows where his career would have gone at 38. Maybe the UFC doesn't bring him back. I think they probably still would have given him another fight, but good to see Magny bounce back here. He's been fighting nothing but killers, and Neil Magny has to get an honorable mention as well. How about Austin Bashi? His opponent switches up on fight week. Again, huge favorite in this fight, so that's why I don't think his stock goes up too much. He's minus 850. I think that was actually the biggest favorite on this card. But it's just the fact that he went in there and took care of work real quick. And Bashi, disappointing loss to Christian Rodriguez, but this is the Austin Bashi we saw on the regional scene on the Contender Series. Very good win there for Austin Bashi. And can't ignore Puliaev in this spot. Again, favored in this fight against Nick Klein, but it's just him getting a finish here. Only a slight favorite here at minus 125. He improves to 10-3. And you look at what he's been able to do at 27 years old. Nice win there after losing to Chris Duncan in his UFC debut. I think his stock goes up at middleweight. So very impressive there for Puliaev in his fight. Okay, let's get to the stock droppers here. This people may disagree with this one on here, but Rebecki's stock has to be going down at this point. Now, again, I don't think he fought bad in this fight. If you actually look at the significant strikes, he actually outlanded Chris Duncan. But it's the fact that he's now lost 2 of 3. So that's tough after a guy who went on a nice run here, hadn't lost since 2014 prior to that. And now he's got the loss to Ferreira, where he was favored and he got finished in that fight. He was a minus 500 favorite. And then here he was favored too. Again, I don't think the performance was bad. I just look at the optics of this. 32 years old, you've lost 2 of 3. The chances of him making some sort of run at lightweight have definitely gone down significantly. So to me, he's the biggest stock dropper in my opinion, just because he was one of the few favorites on this card that did end up losing. Another stock dropper, and I don't know how much stock he had going in, but Tresean Gore missing weight and then losing this fight. And this fight was not exciting whatsoever. Gore coming in, what was the official weight? I think it was 4.5 pounds over, 3.5 pounds over. Came in at 189.5. And you had plenty of notice for this fight. Not a good look here from Tresean Gore. Of course, remember him from The Ultimate Fighter. Started that UFC career off, 0-2, and then looked like he was turning a corner with back-to-back wins, and now he's lost 2 in a row now. Would not be surprised if UFC parts ways with him, or at least gives him a very short leash going forward, just because this wasn't a good fight, and he misses weight. It's tough because I know he made a big change going to the MMA lab, but doesn't seem to be doing too much for him. So Tresean Gore, stock dropper here. And then got to mention Nick Klein as well, as far as a stock dropper. Again, he was the underdog in this fight, but now Nick Klein is 0-2 in the UFC. He's now been finished in both fights. Pretty tough to do for a guy who's 29 years old, so he gets an honorable mention as a stock dropper here as well. So yeah, just to go over the stock risers, stock droppers real quick here. Chris Duncan, Tatsuro Taira are my stock risers. Also going with Robievix as well. Honorable mentions go to Neil Magny, Puilev, and Austin Bashi. And then your stock droppers are Rebecki. Actually, I don't think Zaleski had much stock going in there, but didn't want to mention him. Tresean Gore and Nick Klein. I'm kind of looking at some of these names that lost, and I just don't know how much big time stock they had. I guess Park's stock could have gone down because he was undefeated, but I don't fault the guy. You're having a brand new opponent on short notice. You're facing arguably one of the best prospects at flyweight in the world right now. I think that's kind of a tall task there for Park. So yeah, he loses some stock, but he also gets some good grace with the UFC for taking a fight on short notice. So got to give him a little bit of credit for that. But yeah, I thought this card overall was pretty decent. I didn't watch it live. I did end up watching it this morning, but it's just a typical Apex card where, not a ton of movement in either division. Although I think the only big movement I would say is Taira at flyweight, because he's sort of a player now. And now you could put him against a lot of these contenders in the weight class. I don't know what they'll do with him, actually. He was supposed to fight Albazi. I think at this point you kind of move on from that matchup. Maybe you give Taira someone else. But yeah, we'll see. It's exciting times in the flyweight division. And again, some of these fights here really did move the needle as far as their respective divisions. Yeah, not much to kind of talk about with this card. Now we're sort of moving on to the next card. And then obviously we're all really hyped for UFC 319, the DDP and Chimaev fight, which you guys haven't seen on this channel. Already did my early look preview for that title fight, so curious to get your thoughts on that. So yeah, so let me know in the comments what your 3 biggest stock risers and 3 biggest stock droppers are. Would love to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @LynchOnSports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.